oh, hell no. I'm like, this is like some demon, like horror movie stuff. I'm like, I'm hearing people's arms like popping and like crazy wild stuff. And I'm like, no. I'm like, I grew up Catholic. No, I am not going to fall into another cult. I'm not doing all this stuff. Hey, you guys, welcome to Season 1, Episode 1 of Real Talk with Coach Chris. I'm Coach Chris. This is my beautiful wife, Antoinette. And today we're going to kind of talk about, like, in the beginning, like how we kind of ended up where we are. So I've been in ministry for about 10 years now. My wife has been in ministry.
Same,
roughly about the same time. There is a gap. There is actually about a 1 year gap where she's been in church longer than I have. And that's kind of what we're talking about, because we've met a lot of couples, whether they're married or boyfriend and girlfriend, who, one person is going to church and the other person isn't, and vice versa, whether it's a boyfriend or girlfriend, husband or wife. And so, when we first started going, well, I was born and raised Catholic, first communion, first, what was it called?
Confirmation.
First, confirmation, going to church every Sunday with my parents, going to church every Sunday with my mom, and all that other good stuff. But it really wasn't until, my wife brought me to my first Christian church here in Diamond Bar, California, that everything just kind of changed. And so, like, do you remember that?
Yes. Is this a concert? What are we here? Like, do they do this every Sunday? It was funny. To watch you sit up in your seat, eyes wide open. It was like you uncovered something that was like the most amazing thing ever. I'll never forget the way you looked that day.
To me, it was cool because, like, for those of you who are Catholic or still go, or are now Christian and used to go to a Catholic church, like, how it is. Like, it's very rhythmic and robotic, and I don't say that with any type of disrespect to the Catholic Church, but it's very, repetition. You go, you sit, you stand, you kneel, you stand, you shake hands, you hug, you communion, all the other good stuff, right? And so going from something as somber as that to a church where it's a worshiping church. I still remember I walk into this church and the music's going, the lights are going, and it's like, I thought it was a rock concert. And I remember I leaned into my wife. I'm like, babe, like, is this a special event or something? And she looks at me funny. Well, no, actually, I remember I asked her, before I was open into the idea of going to a Christian church, was, do I have to wear a suit? Because, growing up, like, all my friends, they went to, Christian churches, and, a lot of my friends were African American, and, they would Sunday best suit, their moms or dads would wear, Sunday best dresses, hats, and what is it, Baptist? Baptist church, And so I thought that's how you would have to dress going there. She's like, no, like, you can literally come as you are. I'm like, that's weird. I always had to, so I could wear like shorts and a tank top. She's like, I mean, you could, but I probably wouldn't. So I dressed decent. And so I remember I walked in and it was just like, this music was just like, wow, like, this is crazy. Like, this is how they worship God. Like, it was a whole new culture shock for me. And so it was maybe not too long after that we ended up going to another church, similar thing. Like, it was super cool, go on Sunday. And at this time, like, we really didn't know, like, what it was like changing our lives for God.
No.
It's like we would go to church, every Sunday. We didn't go to like midweek service or nothing like that. We'd go to church every Sunday, and after church, we would go out and go drink and, get hammered.
We would come in still drunk from the night before.
Yeah, hungover.
With no conviction at all. Still reeking of alcohol, sitting there amongst all these people.
Yeah. And it was crazy. Like, there was no conviction to change our lifestyle at all. We figured, I'm like, oh, we're going to church. Like, we're good people. Like, it's good. Pastor's funny, and, we had a good time. We would help during Christmas time, during the toy drives and stuff like that, and delivering meals, like all the stuff that we thought we should be doing. And so it wasn't until, how did that whole thing happen? How did we end up at Pastors?
Well, I slipped and fell at Costco.
Right.
Right? And so that hurt my back so bad I couldn't do anything. Right before then, I had taken, like, we had did the vow there at that church, and I had stopped drinking.
I forgot about that. That's right.
And so 2 weeks in is when I slipped and fell. And I was like, man, we were so active in the gym, and really like we were getting everything in and doing everything right. And I couldn't do anything. And Amanda's like, no, get up, Amanda and Bree, right? She's like, no, like you're not going to just sit there and just mope, and you got to get up and do something. I'm like, I can't. Like I physically hurt, right? And she goes, come on, let's just go and get on the stairs or something. You have to do something to get yourself better. And I was like, who are you? Like what? And so I was like, fine. She's like, let's just go. So we're over there, we're getting on, we're on the stairs. I end up having like a little breakdown or whatever. She's like, fine, let's just go upstairs. We were at 24 hour. And I remember we would always see this lady, and she was so fit, so incredible. She was beautiful, amazing. There was something about her that every time I saw her at the gym, I was like, I want to be like her. Like, she's amazing. So I see her, she always wore oversized clothes, but there would be times that she would take her shirt off, her sweater, and it was just, she would have a tank top or a sleeveless shirt, and I'm like, dude, she's ripped. So I said to her, hey, you must have an amazing body under all those clothes. Total creep status. And she goes, I'm sorry. And she takes her earpod out, right? And I was like, oh, you have an amazing physique. Why do you cover it up with such baggy clothes? Like I got to redeem myself, right? And she was like, oh, stop, thank you. And then we just got to talking. So that was Stacy. And she ended up praying because she had given me her card or something, and I reached for it, and she, kind of fast forward, like she told me a lot of stuff that day. She ended up prophesying and getting like a word of knowledge, and she started to just tell me everything about everything that was going on at the moment. And I was just so like, whoa, this is crazy. I've never met anybody like this.
So
where you come in.
A little bit of a backstory. Okay, a little bit of a backstory. So this, now going back to the night that she's at the gym and she meets Stacy for the first time. So at this time, I'm a banker. I'm working for a very well-known bank in the city of Chino Hills. And at this point, this is now maybe like a year or two previous to my wife running into her at the gym. At this point of our marriage, me and my wife are going through some marital problems, right? We're not really, the valley. Yeah, we're going through, no, not the valley. This was
Valley.
Before. Oh yeah, going through the valley. Yeah, definitely the valley.
Yes.
We're going through a lot of marital issues, and I wear my emotions on my face. So a lot of my friends, will attest. Even my wife will attest that, I have my face needs deliverance. Okay?
That's right.
And so I'm at my job, and I'm kind of there just going through the motions, and this lady comes up to me. Right? Remember, this is about 2 years prior to my wife meeting Stacy. She's at my window, and she was like, Chris, can I pray for you? And I'm kind of taken aback because, I'm not really the spiritual guy at this point. And I was like, sure. And so she's praying this prayer, and she's saying, like, she's talking some other language I've never heard of before, right? Later come to find out it's like the tongues. And then she looks at me and tells me, everything's going to work out fine. Your marriage is going to be okay. And I look at her, and I'm like, wait, what? And she was like, God told me to tell you that your marriage is going to be okay. It's all going to work out. And at this point, I'm like, oh, this is one of those crazy psychic people, right? And so, because at the time, I didn't know about prophetic people or God giving words to people for other people, of like words of encouragement and stuff like that. So I'm like, so I'm the logical thinker. So I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, I look pissed off. I have a wedding ring on. I mean, come on, like it's obvious that's kind of like a 8 out of 10 shot that might stick, right? That someone's upset who happens to have a wedding band on, they're probably going through marital problems. This is how my brain thinks. And so I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And she gives me a card, and I look at it, and here she is, smiling on it, big old cheesy smile. And I'm like, oh, what do you do? She's like, oh, I'm a life coach. And I'm like, okay. I stick it in my wallet, completely forget about it. Fast forward.
That night I came home.
That night, my wife comes home. Yeah, she's telling me about this lady. She prays for her at the gym, so on and so forth. 2 years later. The next morning, my wife shows me her business card. I freak out. And I'm like, hold up. Because this lady, Stacy, has a very... I can spot her in a crowd, put it that way, okay? She has a very distinctive look to her. And I see it, and I freak out. I run to my room. Now, at this point, I had already been transferred to another branch. I completely forgot about this lady. I pull out my old wallet. I get the card. I run out. I'm like, this lady? So the same woman, okay, in another city was the same woman who came to me at my window at the
That was
bank.
what city were you in?
Chino Hills.
Chino Hills.
Okay.
Mine
Same
was in
woman
Glendora.
came to me who told me that my marriage was going to be okay was the same woman who prayed for my wife
And prophesied
and
over
prophesied over her 2 years later. Okay. This is the amazing, and when I say crazy, I mean it in the most incredible way.
Yeah.
But this is just one of the most crazy moments I think that like God has really shown himself in our life, right?
Yeah.
Because to me, like being the logical thinker, like I operate off of like statistics and facts and figures. So the sheer odds of the same woman giving me that word 2 years prior, and then my wife running into her. And as these episodes progress, you get to know more of our story. You know, we'll kind of throw tidbits in there. So she invites her to this event, and me having been part of a cult before, yeah, I'll get into that in another episode.
Wow.
So my wife tells me, "Oh, I'm gonna go to this event with all these, amazing people, blah blah blah." I'm like,
I didn't even know where I was going. She just invited me to a prayer something.
yeah.
That's all I knew. And I was like, okay.
So I tell my wife, I tell her, don't eat anything, don't drink anything, don't even breathe the air, don't talk to no one, don't touch hands. I'm like, I'm telling you, these cults, man, they'll jack you up, they'll brainwash you and all kinds of crazy stuff.
And I
right?
didn't.
And she actually did it.
I didn't, because I didn't want, like, what I experienced that night, I had never experienced anywhere. And I knew that if I did have anything, you'd be like, see, it's because they put something in, blah, 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 blah. So I literally went there and I said, okay, before I walked into that house, I said, if you are real, make yourself known to me. And I experienced him in such a way that changed my life from that very moment on forever. And I knew that everything I was looking for in my life was him. In that very moment, he just like revealed, like, all these things you were looking for, here I am. And he showed up, and I can never turn away from him from that moment, because I ended up getting knocked out in the spirit, and nobody touched me. And that's the crazy part. Like, people are saying, oh, it's people are putting their hands. Prophet Gershom was in front of me, and they said, whoever wants healing, stand up. Man, my spirit leaped before I even had a chance to think about it. And I stood up, and I'm like, sat back down real quick, like, whoa, I'm not ready for this right now. And even Stacy kind of looked at me like, oh, dang, And they literally asked, like, for anybody who wants healing, come up and we'll pray for you. I remember standing in this line, and I'm looking at Stacy, and I'm like, help, And she's like, go on. And she was standing behind me. And all of a sudden, my arm started to do this crazy little shake. And I was like, am I that nervous? I've never been this nervous before. And I put my hand in my pocket, and then I started doing this little chicken wing thing. And I put my hand in my back pocket, and I'm like, I can't get it to stop. And I'm like this. Like, it looks like I'm dancing in the middle of this line, right? I was like, what's happening? I'm like, I want you. Full. Everything. I don't want my old life. I don't want anything. I made this vow, and I said that I want you. Come in. However you need to do it, come in. I didn't even know how to speak. I just said, I want you. And it got worse and worse and worse. And I remember standing right there, and we're in this huge mansion, right? And Gershom is standing right in front of me, and I'm looking at him, and he's like, do you want him? And honestly, I don't even remember the word he gave me. I have no idea, because I literally like fell into the spirit so quickly. And I remember closing my eyes, and he's like, okay, receive the light. So I had my hands like this, and I had my eyes closed. Not one person had their hand on me. And he starts to pray whatever he was praying. And I open my eyes real quick, and I'm like looking around, because I felt a fire literally stirring around me. And I'm like, and I'm looking for vents. I'm looking for this freaking, she has, what are they called? Vaulted ceilings, right? She's huge. It was a 2-story house, so the ceilings were really high. And I'm looking for vents, and I don't see nothing. I'm looking for heaters, and I'm like, this is you. So I knew in that moment that that was God. And I was like, let's go. Finish. I literally told him, finish what you started. Let's go. And I closed my eyes and I woke up on the floor in a puddle of my own tears. And I just remember feeling this love that I have been searching for my entire life. I remember feeling everything that I thought I was inadequate in, like dissipate. I didn't feel none of it. I felt renewed. I felt rejuvenated. I didn't even realize at the time that I had an issue with my back, you know?
Okay, so there's another side to this, okay?
Oh.
So my wife got to experience like this amazing spiritual night. And I still remember her the next morning coming and telling me everything. And in my head, I'm like, nah, they drugged her. Something
Remember,
happened.
I woke up and I was like, I started cleaning. You came home and I was like, you're like, what are you doing your back?
Yeah.
And I was like, my back.
And I just remember thinking, because like I'm number one skeptic. Like, if you have ever met a skeptic who will try to, figure out how the magician did it, that's me. Mm-hmm. And so she's telling me about all this and the prayer and the fire ring and all these other things. And in my head, I'm thinking, I'm like, oh yeah, she went to a cult. Straight up. I'm like, oh, I told her not to go to this thing. Right. And so she invited me, it was, what was harvest time at the time?
Santiano Bible Study. Well, it wasn't the Bible study. We were just going when we would go on Sundays.
Yeah. They were having it at a hotel at the time. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, like, this is weird. Like, this isn't like the other Christian churches I've been to. Like, they're talking in weird languages and flags and all kinds of stuff, right? And so I'm like, oh, okay.
December,
so finally,
we went to the house.
So finally, yeah.
Santiano Bible
Study. It was on Thursdays at our pastor's home. And I remember going, I maybe went once or twice. Maybe went once or twice at the house. And that night they started praying for people and speaking in tongues. And I started seeing people get healed. And I'm like, oh, hell no. I'm like, this is like some demon, like horror movie stuff. I'm like, I'm hearing people's arms like popping and like crazy wild stuff. And I'm like, no. I'm like, I grew up Catholic. No, I am not going to fall into another cult. I'm not doing all this stuff. So I stopped going. And
I kept going.
She kept going.
Yeah.
And so me still, kind of not even tiptoeing that line, because I would go to church, right? And
at the other church,
and she would go to the Bible study on Thursdays. I was still, I'm not even saying tiptoeing the line, because I was still in the world. I just so happened to go on church on Sundays. And be honest, we know a lot of people who are like that, who are like, oh, no, I'm a good Christian, in between, drinks and drugs and all this other stuff, and so.
I remember telling Pastor that one of those Thursdays, and I was like, Pastor, like, my husband doesn't, because he would ask about you. Him and Manny would always ask about you. And I'm like, he thinks you guys are crazy. I was like, he thinks this is like fake. And I'm like, but I know that this is real. And Pastor's like, when you get married, you become one. In this house, he said, we honor each other. And he said, honor is big, and you need to honor your husband. And if he doesn't want you coming here, you can't come here. And I was like, you don't want me here? Like, I felt so sad. And he said, no, of course we want you here. We want you here. We want you to continue to grow. And I was like, yeah, but I'm not growing at that other church. I don't feel anything. Like, I'm not learning anything. I'm not doing anything like it. I don't feel the Holy Spirit. I know who he is now, and I feel him here, and I don't feel him over there, and I've never felt him anywhere else. Why would you send me back to that place? Like, it was like his fault.
See, and this is the thing, and this is where I was at, because, and this is where it's so important to not be led by emotion and by feelings. Not to say that they're not valid, but when I was going to the other church, right, it's in no disrespect to the other church, because the pastor there was funny. Yeah. He was funny. He was amazing, full of wisdom, and it was the church I went there to feel good, because like I was still drinking, I was still going, and like she never once made me feel like a horrible person for still wanting to go to a bar. Like we would still go, she just wouldn't drink, right? And so I would still be going through, my normal routine every weekend, and I noticed that now, because not that we fought all the time.
Yeah, we did.
But
let's be real. This is called real talk.
All
right?
right, you know what? We fought more than normal.
We fought a lot. Like it was exhausting. Like we came into this, I was on drugs, he was drinking. Like we didn't start off good.
No.
And then we got pregnant 4 months in.
We'll get to that. Our testimony is long, but we'll get to that.
It went into something like we started off on the bad foot.
There was insecurities. There was, just a whole bunch of stuff. Our marriage had suffered a lot because our marriage wasn't, the foundation was not based on God. It was based on, honestly, it was based on sex. When we first got together, it was based on, physical attraction. And, God was not present anywhere in our relationship, whether when we were boyfriend, girlfriend, husband and wife. And so, of course, me still being worldly, seeing my wife so happy and knowing I'm not making her happy, I'm thinking like, nah, there's someone at that Bible study.
Oh, you were so right. Jesus.
No, like, you don't even know. Like, I went, okay, so, like I said, I'm the logistical skeptic, right? So I will go to the ends of the earth to prove something wrong or false or true. So sure enough, I started my investigation. Started looking into the people, started
going through my purse,
looking in her bag, like expecting a dude to jump out of it when I'm looking through it. See selfies of like her and another guy, something. I'm going through her phone, and she would willingly let me see her phone. And sure enough, a year later, she's like she's so spirit-filled, and it's like, it wasn't making me mad, but there was something that was like, dude, here I am. I'm going to this church. She's going to this church. But
hey, I still went to your church on Sundays.
Yeah.
Because I honored you.
But see, okay, so, and this is where my logic, now, see, this is how amazing God is, because he knows the type of person I am. Obviously, he made me. But this is where he now will use my logic. He will allow me to use my logic to prove him right. And so after I find nothing, after all of my investigations develop zero, zilch, nada of a guy being there, right, that she's cheating on me with, she comes home one night, and here I am, like Mr. like grumpy. She walks in, I'm like, oh my God, like Jesus is so good. And I'm like, oh, dude, this freaking sucks. So of course, my natural instinct is I'm like, oh, I want to pick a fight with her just for the hell of it. So I try to pick a fight with her, and she's just smiling at me and refuses to argue with me. And I'm like, dude, like, you know what? Like, I can't do this no more.
And I looked at him, I was like, what? He's like, I can't do this no more. And I was like, I was so sad.
And I was like, I'm like, no, it wasn't. I'm like, dude, I'm tired. Like, in my head, I'm like, I don't get it. I'm going to this church, just like the good Christian I am. I'm doing, we're helping the needy. We're doing all these things. Like, why am I still so mad? Why am I Why am I going through all these emotions? Something's wrong. I'm doing something wrong, right? Because if you do something over and over and it's not yielding any results, there's something wrong. And so I tell her, I'm tired of it. I'm done. And she gives me this look like, wait, what? And I'm like, no, I'm tired of being bitter. I'm tired of being angry. I'm tired of being pissed off all the time. Like, I'm over it. Next week, I'm going with you to that Bible study. I want what you've got. I'm like, I'm tired of it. I want joy. I want happiness. Like, this isn't what I'm supposed to be like. I don't know what the hell happened. But my logic can only conclude that I'm going somewhere that I'm not being spiritually fed. So now, prior to me leaving Harvest Time, I would go and, I'm sorry, Andrea. I would go, and the worship part of the church was longer than it is now. Sometimes it would go for an hour or 7 or marathons. And here I am, bald guy, at the time, like this, front row, standing at my now amazing worship leader, my sister Andrea. I'm like this. If you extend this song one more time, I swear I'm going to flip. I did not know that song on the radio, it goes for 2.5 minutes, not 19. I didn't know it had 17 of the same chorus and bridges. I'm like, oh, now you wanna, what is it called? Oh,
Spontaneous.
now it's a spontaneous thing. Okay, now we're doing mashups. Cool. We're doing mashups of different worship songs, hours long. So finally, when worship would end, I'm like, oh, we have to go home. I got to work tomorrow. Pastor gets on the mic. All right, guys, now it's time for the message. I'm like, oh man, all right. So I'm like, dude, I cannot be here for hours on end.
And now
That was before. When I went back, oh wow, worship would end. I'm like, wait, why is it over? I'm like, I was just getting into it. It's only been 3 hours. It's Pastor. It's only midnight. Come on, we need more. I was so hungry for it, so hungry for it, and
we would stay there forever too.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it would go. There was a few times that we went till like 2 a.m. with
Poor
all those
Pastora.
activations. I know,
Poor Pastora.
man, but
Oh
those
my
are some
God.
of like amazing encounters that we had with God. That's when you first saw him.
Yeah.
We had that activation with Prophetess Purity.
And I think that's the thing, like, kind of as we begin to wrap it up, is we've come across a lot of couples who one person, is farther along spiritually on their walk than the other. And at that point, that's where my wife was.
Right.
But honestly, like there is no regret at all of how it played out, because now that we're now 10 and 11 years into this, like I'm like, man, like that's only a fraction of like some of the amazing stuff that God has done to like show himself in our life, and like now, like we both serve, she's on the worship team, like I'm, the media manager, and like it's crazy because like the natural gifts and talents that like God has blessed us with, like we're using like to serve in our church, and
our son.
What do you mean?
He's on the media team too.
Oh yeah, and our oldest son, Ada, like he's like right next to me, like serving on the media team, and so just to give you guys a little bit of like hope and encouragement that girlfriends, if your boyfriend doesn't want to go to church, or if your husband doesn't want to go to church, keep going.
Yeah.
If you're being spiritually fed at a church, whether it's ours or another church, keep going, because they're going to see the difference in you. Because nowhere through that entire journey did she ever tell me like, oh, like you're a horrible person for still wanting to drink, or she never condemned me or tried to make me feel convicted for it. I ended up doing all that on my own because of her example. I wanted to be a better man and husband for my wife because of her wanting to be closer to God, and I think that's the biggest thing is like, man, like once I realized like, no, dude, like she's really my God's daughter. I don't want to be a douchebag, anymore, for her. Like I want to be a better man. I want to be better, like qualified. I want God to be able to see me and be like, yeah, he's good for my wife. So vice versa, like men, like if you're going to a church, like if you're, rooted in a church and, you're going and God's filling your spirit and your wife is kind of on the fence of wanting to go, trust me, like you guys don't have to make them feel bad for the choices they're making. Love them. Yes. I will honestly say, and there's a heck of a lot more that me and my wife have to share, but there's a lot of times in my life where my wife has literally loved the bad right out of me, the evil right out of me. You can say it. What? Hell. She loved the hell right out of me, literally. I honestly don't remember or recall one single time that my wife has ever said like, no, like, you're horrible for doing this, or you're bad for doing that. Since this walk, like these past like 11 years, she's never done that to me. And honestly, I'm a better person for it. I'm a better man for it. I'm a better husband for it, a better father for it, a better friend, because she never once made me feel guilty or made me feel bad for a stupid, dumb choice that I made, And so that's what we want to encourage you guys with this episode, is that don't try to condemn or convict someone into changing their life. Like that's why like I can't stand it when like there's these people like on street corners with signs that say like, oh, if you're gay, you're going to hell. If you're an atheist, you're going to hell. If you're no, I understand that, yes, that's the end result. Right. But in our own personal testimony, I came to my salvation because my wife decided to love me through my imperfections,
Right.
through my problems, through my addictions, through, all of those other things. It was never a message or a posture of she was better than me.
No.
She's never made me feel less than her, ever. If anything, she has always tried to elevate me and push me higher. And so that's what, I really want to convey. That's what we really want to tell you guys is, if you have a family member, a husband, a wife, a brother, a cousin, dad, or father, be the example.
Yes.
Be that example of love and compassion, because they only know what they're taught. I grew up with a dad, so I only knew how to party and drink and be this way as a man, as a worldly man, from my friends. And it really wasn't until, I was taken under the wing from my pastor that he showed me how to be a real man of God. And like, I look at my kids, I look at my wife and my life and my family and our business and everything. And I'm like, man, like, yeah, it might not be where we want it to be yet, but it's a heck of a lot better than where it could have been.
Where it was.
Oh, heck yeah. Man, it was just
all day.
Yeah. But
that's the key is, and that's something that we share, like when we're mentoring or we're talking to people. Our parents only know how to love us the way that they were loved. So, and then that goes on again. Their parents only know how to love the way that they were loved. So we have to have grace and mercy every single day for the people that were around us that fell short, because they didn't know how to love the way that God did. They did not know how to treat us like the children of God that we are. So we have to learn how to love them through it all. And I think that's just the key, whether it's a husband, wife, your kids, they're going to question God, and that's okay. They should, because just like Pastor said, fact check me.
Yeah.
Fact check God, because he's going to win every single time.
I try to do it.
Yeah. And you're only going to fall more and deeply in love with him than not.
Yeah.
Every single time.
I've noticed that. Like, the more I've tried to prove that he didn't exist, the more I found, like, oh man, he's literally in everything.
Yes.
Like, everything. Like, and I'm talking like on a much, much deeper, like molecular level. He's in everything.
So amazing.
But yeah, so thank you. Next episode, we will actually be talking about faith.
Oh, faith.
How strong is it?
How real is it?
Is it a feeling, a thought, an emotion? Or like the Bible says, is now faith, the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. So God bless you guys. Thank you for watching. If you haven't yet, please hit the subscribe button. Like, it would mean the world to us. Like, we want to use this, not to talk about like satire and trendy things, but we really want to bring a light to God.
Yes.
Like, we don't want to highlight like the demonic things. We want to talk about how good God is.
Yeah.
That in light of those things, he is still God.
Amen.
That's what this podcast is about. This podcast, first and foremost, is about God, how good he is, what he's doing today, and how by what he's doing, it can and will change your guys' lives.
True.
So God bless you guys. Thank you. Subscribe. Watch the next. Stay tuned for the next video. Hit the notification button, and we will see you on the next one.